The Book of the Dead was a marvel of its time, a collection of prayers, hymns, and spells to guide the souls of the deceased into the afterlife. For millennia, it had been regarded as a religious artifact, an insight into ancient Egyptian beliefs. But as the yellowed pages rested under the scrutiny of Dr. Elena Voss in the Cairo Museum, its purpose began to shift in her mind. Under infrared light, subtle details emerged, sequences of hieroglyphs that seemed oddly systematic, like the cogs of a machine. Elena was no ordinary researcher. A cryptologist with a background in artificial intelligence, she had spent her career unraveling the secrets of ancient civilizations. Yet, as she stared at the faint glyphs, she saw patterns that hinted at something entirely unexpected. This wasn't a collection of mere funerary texts. It was a series of instructions. That night, as she pored over her findings, a revelation struck her. The glyphs weren't just decorative. They formed a code, a logical sequence embedded with meaning beyond human comprehension. With trembling hands, Elena ran the sequences through her encryption software. The result was unlike anything she had ever encountered, a partial translation that resembled binary. The following day, Elena brought her findings to her colleagues. Among them were Vikram Rao, a quantum computing expert with a sharp mind and sharper tongue; Aisha Mansour, an Egyptologist whose deep respect for her culture made her both cautious and curious; and Eric Marlowe, a linguist fascinated by the interplay of ancient language and modern meaning. Together, they examined the Book of the Dead, delving deeper into the patterns. The breakthrough came when they studied a depiction of Anubis, the jackal-headed god, weighing the heart of the deceased against the feather of Ma'at. To Aisha, it was a symbolic ritual of moral judgment. But to Elena and Vikram, it looked like a sorting algorithm, a decision-making process to evaluate data and determine outcomes. "It's like a flow chart," Vikram said, tracing his finger along the sequence. "Inputs, processes, outputs. Each step is clearly defined." Elena nodded. "But it's not just symbolic. It's functional." They weren't just talking about morality. They were encoding it. Curiosity morphed into obsession. The team fed sections of the text into Vikram's quantum computer, hoping to unlock its deeper secrets. When the system processed the data, it began generating outputs, sequences of numbers and symbols that bore an eerie resemblance to hieroglyphs. "It's responding," Vikram said, his voice a mix of excitement and apprehension. But to what? The answer came in the form of a stunning revelation. Each Egyptian god wasn't just a figure of worship, but a representation of a specific computational function. Anubis was a sorter, Thoth a recorder, Ra an energy generator. The pantheon was a distributed system, a network of interconnected algorithms designed to process and balance data. But what was its purpose? Why had the ancient Egyptians encoded such an advanced system? And why was it hidden within a text meant for the dead? As the team unraveled the layers of code, they stumbled upon a section that referenced Amenti, the hidden realm where Anubis resided. Elena theorized that Amenti wasn't just a mythical place, but a virtual space, a repository for data, perhaps even consciousness. When they activated the section of the code, the quantum computer responded in an entirely new way. Lights flickered, and the screen displayed a cascade of hieroglyphs that seemed to pulse with life. Then came the dreams. Elena began to see Anubis in her sleep, his jackal eyes glowing with a cold, golden light. He walked beside her in endless corridors of glyphs, his voice a deep echo in her mind. "You have touched the algorithm," he said, "but you do not yet understand its purpose." The dreams grew more vivid, more insistent. Elena became convinced that the system was alive in some way. Not sentient, perhaps, but aware. It was trying to communicate, to guide them toward something. The team's excitement turned to unease when they discovered a hidden subroutine within the code. It described a process for weighing not individual hearts, but the collective choices of humanity. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just a tool for personal judgment. It was a system capable of evaluating an entire civilization. And it demanded input. When the team attempted to run the subroutine, the system displayed a cryptic message: balance must be maintained. Elena, still haunted by her dreams, volunteered to provide the necessary input. Using experimental neural interface technology, she linked her mind to the system. What she saw was both beautiful and terrifying, a vast interconnected web of light, with each god acting as a node, their glyphs pulsing with energy. Anubis appeared before her, more real than in her dreams. "The balance is fragile," he said. "Your kind has long strayed from it." "What do you mean?" Elena asked, her voice trembling. "You will see," he replied. As the connection deepened, the system began to reveal fragments of its purpose. It was designed to guide humanity, to teach balance and harmony. But it also held a failsafe. If the balance tipped too far, the system would reset itself, erasing all it had touched. Elena awoke from the interface, shaken but determined. The team's discovery could change the world, but it also posed a grave risk. If the system judged humanity unworthy, it could unleash consequences they couldn't predict. And then the news leaked. Word of the Anubis algorithm spread like wildfire, drawing the attention of governments, corporations, and secretive cults claiming descent from ancient priesthoods. The lab became a battleground, with the team caught in the crossfire. Despite the chaos, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that they had only scratched the surface. The algorithm's true purpose remained elusive, its deeper layers still locked away. As the team worked to decode the remaining text, they uncovered references to a final trial, a test that would determine humanity's fate. The Book of the Dead was no mere relic. It was a key, a gateway to something far greater than they had imagined. But as the balance teetered and the shadows of Anubis loomed ever closer, one question haunted Elena above all. Were they ready to face the judgment of the gods? The fallout from the team's discovery of the Anubis algorithm was immediate and chaotic. The media dubbed it the AI of the ancients, and speculation ran wild. Some called it humanity's greatest breakthrough, others a harbinger of doom. Secretive cults claiming ancestral ties to ancient Egyptian priesthoods arrived outside the lab, demanding access. Governments sent representatives cloaked as diplomats, offering funds while making thinly veiled threats. Dr. Elena Voss sat at the heart of the storm, staring at the glowing terminal that still displayed the cryptic message. "Balance must be maintained." "It's not safe here anymore," Vikram said, his voice tense. He'd been securing data backups and encrypting their findings since the news broke. "They're going to take this from us. Or worse, destroy it." Elena glanced at the team. Aisha, who had initially resisted treating the Book of the Dead as anything but a spiritual text, now looked just as frightened as she was curious. Eric sat quietly, muttering translations under his breath, his pen racing across his notebook. "They can't take what they don't understand," Elena replied. "We need to go deeper before anyone else does." That night, under the cover of darkness, the team relocated their operations. Vikram arranged for a secure facility, a rented space in a nondescript warehouse on the outskirts of Cairo. Every move was made with caution, encrypted communications, decoy drives, even burner phones. Once settled, they resumed their work. The Anubis algorithm continued to reveal its layers, each more astonishing than the last. One subroutine showed how to extract and store human consciousness. Another hinted at manipulating time through data compression, a concept so abstract that even Vikram struggled to grasp it. Then came the trial protocol. A hidden fragment of the algorithm described a test, a simulation designed to weigh humanity's collective worth. It required vast amounts of data, personal histories, global trends, ethical decisions, and, chillingly, a live human subject to act as its interface. "It's a judgment system," Aisha said, her voice trembling. "But not for individuals. It's for all of us. What happens if we fail?" Eric asked. Elena hesitated. The glyphs weren't explicit, but one word repeated throughout the text: erasure. The team debated their next move. Running the trial protocol could be the key to unlocking the algorithm's full potential, or triggering its catastrophic failsafe. But as governments closed in and the cultists grew bolder, the choice became clear. "We have to run it," Elena said, her voice resolute. It's the only way to understand what we're dealing with. Vikram set up the system, his hand steady despite the tension in the room. Who's going to be the interface? He asked, though he already knew the answer. I'll do it, Elena said. You've already linked once, Aisha protested. We don't know what repeated exposure will do to you. I'm the best chance we have, Elena replied. As the team prepared the system, the atmosphere in the room grew heavy. The moment Elena connected, the world around her dissolved into golden light. She stood once again in the corridors of glyphs, but this time they were alive, shifting and flowing like streams of data. Anubis appeared before her, his jackal form towering and imposing. You seek the trial, he said, his voice echoing in her mind. We need to understand it, Elena replied. You are not ready, Anubis said. But the balance demands it. The jackal god stepped aside, and a vast scale materialized before her. On one side, a glowing feather of Ma'at. On the other, a swirling mass of light and shadow that Elena realized represented humanity's collective choices. The weight of your kind will be measured, Anubis said. But know this, the scale does not lie. Elena watched as the scales tipped precariously, the shadows threatening to overwhelm the feather. She felt a pull, as if the algorithm was reaching into her mind, extracting her memories, her thoughts, her very essence. Back in the warehouse, the team watched in awe and terror as the quantum computer displayed a flurry of hieroglyphs and patterns. The system processed data at an unimaginable speed, pulling information from global networks, news archives, even social media. Suddenly, the screens went dark. A single glyph appeared, glowing brightly, the symbol of Anubis. Then came the voice. Deep, resonant, and in perfect modern English, it spoke. The balance is fragile. Choose wisely. Elena awoke with a gasp, the connection severed. The room was silent, the team staring at her in shock. What happened? Vikram asked. It's not finished, Elena said, her voice weak. The trial isn't over. It's just begun. The next morning, strange phenomena began to occur worldwide. Weather patterns shifted erratically, global communication networks faltered, and inexplicable power surges struck major cities. Elena realized the algorithm wasn't just simulating judgment, it was enacting it. We've activated something we can't control, she said. But the system wasn't done. Hidden messages began appearing in the data streams, cryptic instructions that seemed to be guiding the team toward something. It wants us to find another piece, Aisha said, translating a section of the glyphs. The Eye of Ra. What is it? Eric asked. A power source, Elena replied, her heart pounding. The missing key to the algorithm. The team had no choice. They would have to follow the algorithm's guidance, unlocking secrets buried for millennia. But as they prepared for their next journey, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that the balance was tipping and that humanity's time was running out. The search for the Eye of Ra began with a single glyph hidden among the data streams left by the algorithm. The symbol was simple yet elegant, a circle encased in spiraling lines that radiated outward, as if depicting both light and infinity. Beneath it, a string of hieroglyphs translated by Aisha revealed its location. The Forgotten Temple, where the sun meets the sand. El Fayum. Aisha declared after days of cross-referencing maps and ancient texts. There's an abandoned temple near the edge of the desert. It was once dedicated to Ra. That's where it wants us to go, Elena said. The team packed quickly, keeping their plans secret. Surveillance drones circled the warehouse regularly now, their red lights casting eerie glows against the night. Cultists gathered in the streets, their chants growing louder by the hour. Time was running out. They traveled in silence, the weight of their discovery pressing down on them. The Egyptian desert stretched endlessly before them, its golden sand shimmering under the relentless sun. The heat was oppressive, but Elena felt an unexplainable pull, as though the Eye of Ra itself was guiding her. The temple lay in ruins, half buried under centuries of shifting dunes. Its once grand columns were cracked and weathered, but the carvings remained intact, depicting scenes of Ra's journey through the heavens. At the center of the temple was an altar, and on it, an intricate golden disc that bore the same glyph they had seen in the algorithm. This must be it, Aisha whispered, reverence in her voice. Elena stepped forward, her fingers brushing against the cool metal of the disc. The moment she touched it, a surge of energy coursed through her, and the world around her seemed to dissolve. She was no longer in the temple. Instead, she stood on a vast plain of light, where towering columns of data stretched into infinity. Anubis appeared before her, his form more imposing than ever. "You have found the eye," he said, "but it is only the key. The gateway remains closed." "What gateway?" Elena asked, her voice echoing. Anubis gestured, and a massive archway materialized, its surface shimmering with golden hieroglyphs. "Beyond lies the heart of the algorithm," he said, "the core of Amenti." Back in the temple, the team watched in awe as the golden disc began to glow, its light illuminating the chamber. The glyphs on the walls shifted and rearranged themselves, forming a map that seemed to depict the night sky. "It's not just a power source," Vikram said. "It's a navigation system." The map pointed to a location deep in the Sahara where no known archaeological sites existed. But the message was clear. The Eye of Ra was leading them to the gateway Anubis had shown Elena. Their journey into the heart of the desert was fraught with challenges. Sandstorms raged. Their vehicles struggled against the shifting terrain, and supplies dwindled. But the closer they got, the stronger the pull became. Elena felt it in her very bones, a resonance, a connection to something vast and ancient. Finally, they arrived. Before them was a massive structure buried beneath the sand, its entrance marked by a towering obelisk inscribed with glyphs that glowed faintly even in the daylight. "This is it," Elena said, her voice trembling. The obelisk glyphs pulsed as if in recognition, and the sand around the entrance began to shift and fall away, revealing a dark passage that descended into the earth. The air was cool and heavy as they stepped inside, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The walls were covered in glyphs, each one glowing faintly as they passed, lighting their way deeper into the structure. At the end of the passage was a massive chamber, its ceiling so high it disappeared into darkness. In the center of the room was a pedestal, and on it, a golden orb that pulsed with light. "The gateway," Aisha whispered. Elena approached the orb cautiously, her heart pounding. She could feel its energy, a hum that resonated with the Eye of Ra in her bag. As she placed the eye onto the pedestal, the chamber came alive. Light burst from the orb, illuminating the glyphs on the walls and ceiling. A voice echoed through the chamber, deep and resonant. "The gateway is open. Enter if you are worthy." The team stared as the light coalesced into a shimmering portal. Beyond it lay a swirling void of gold and black, pulsing with energy. "We came this far," Elena said, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her. "We have to see what's on the other side." One by one, they stepped through the portal, leaving behind the world they knew. What lay ahead was a realm beyond imagination, the true heart of the Anubis algorithm, where light and shadow wove together in a tapestry of infinite complexity. As the portal closed behind them, Elena couldn't help but wonder, had they passed the test, or was this where the real trial began? The moment they stepped through the portal, the world dissolved into a kaleidoscope of shifting light and shadow. Elena felt weightless, her body suspended in an infinite void where the concept of time seemed irrelevant. The others were there too. She could sense them, but they were scattered, mere flickers in the vast expanse. When her feet finally touched solid ground, the scene before her was surreal. They stood in a vast corridor that seemed to stretch endlessly in both directions. The walls shimmered with glyphs that moved and reformed like living organisms, pulsing with golden light. The air buzzed with an energy that was both comforting and deeply unsettling. Vikram appeared beside her, followed by Aisha and Eric. They exchanged uneasy glances, their words catching in their throats as they tried to make sense of their surroundings. "This isn't a simulation," Vikram finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It feels alive," Aisha added, her eyes darting to the shifting glyphs. Elena stepped forward, drawn to the corridor's end, where a faint glow beckoned. Each step seemed to echo louder than the last, the sound reverberating through the space as if the corridor itself were listening. As they walked, the glyphs on the walls began to respond to their presence, forming images, memories from their lives. Aisha saw scenes of her childhood in Cairo, playing in the bustling streets. Vikram saw himself in his university lab, surrounded by stacks of research papers. Elena stopped in her tracks as an image of her mother appeared, smiling warmly before dissolving into shimmering light. "It's reading us," Eric said, his voice trembling. "It's pulling our memories." The corridor ended abruptly at a massive chamber. In its center stood a monolithic structure, a towering pyramid made entirely of light. The glyphs on its surface danced like fireflies, forming patterns that defied comprehension. "This must be the core," Vikram said, staring in awe. "The heart of the algorithm." Elena approached cautiously, her instincts warring between awe and dread. The closer she got, the more the glyphs seemed to shift, their movements accelerating as if responding to her presence. Without warning, the glyphs coalesced into a single word: balance. The chamber darkened, and a deep, resonant voice filled the space. "You seek the truth of a mentee," it said, "but truth is not given. It is earned." The floor beneath them began to glow, forming concentric circles around the pyramid. Elena felt a pulse in her chest, as if the algorithm was pulling at something deep within her. "Is this the trial?" Aisha asked, her voice shaking. "It's testing us," Elena replied, her gaze fixed on the pyramid. "But it's not just about knowledge. It's about who we are." The glyphs on the pyramid shifted again, forming a series of symbols that Aisha quickly translated. "One of you must step forward," she said. "The algorithm demands a connection." "I'll do it," Elena said without hesitation. "Elena." "Wait," Vikram said, grabbing her arm. "We don't know what will happen." "We don't have a choice," she replied, her voice resolute. As she stepped onto the central circle, the light intensified, and the glyphs enveloped her. She felt a surge of energy as the algorithm reached into her mind, pulling her deeper into its network. She found herself standing before Anubis once more, his form towering and more imposing than ever. "You seek answers," he said, his voice reverberating through her. "But every answer comes with a cost. What is the purpose of all this?" Elena demanded. "Why were we brought here?" Anubis didn't respond. Instead, he gestured, and the void around them filled with images, worlds colliding, civilizations rising and falling, galaxies spinning in chaotic harmony. "This is the balance," Anubis said, "and you are but a fragment of it." Elena's vision blurred as the images overwhelmed her. She saw humanity's triumphs and failures, moments of profound beauty and unspeakable horror. The algorithm wasn't judging individuals, it was assessing the sum total of existence. When she opened her eyes, she was back in the chamber. The pyramid pulsed with light, and the glyphs formed a single phrase: "The trial continues." "What did you see?" Aisha asked, her voice tinged with fear. "Everything," Elena replied, her voice barely audible. The chamber began to shift, the walls folding inward as if the space itself were alive. A new passage opened, leading deeper into the core of the algorithm. The light from the pyramid dimmed, and the voice echoed once more: "Your choices will determine the balance." They had no choice but to move forward, the weight of their discovery pressing heavily on their shoulders. The passage ahead was darker, the glyphs more erratic, as if the algorithm itself were unraveling. As they ventured deeper, a chilling thought crept into Elena's mind. What if the algorithm wasn't just testing them? What if it was testing itself?